2023 was such an unexpectedly huge year for me. I did so many amazing things that I didn't really know were going to happen going into that year. Everything just felt like it was just brilliant surprises. And it was definitely a tough year in places as well. I had mental health struggles throughout the year as well. But I did so much and I read so many books, and I want to talk to you about it today through the power of PowerPoint. I have made a little keynote presentation to share with you today to go through my 2023 in review and also talk about some 2024 goals, including my reading goal, looking at what I want to just generally achieve over the year and what I want to get out of the next year. I feel like 2024 is going to be a really good year. I'm getting the vibe. So you'll have to excuse the cheesy little animations in this, but let's have a look at my 2023 in review and my 2024 goals. 2023 in review. The highlights! So these are some of the best experiences that I had over the last year. I started off going to Paris very spontaneously with Gavin and Sabine, and it was just such a good time. I had the best time with both of them. I will leave both of their YouTube channels linked down below. Honestly, I don't think the year could have started much better than this. I basically booked in to do this about 2 weeks before going. It was incredibly spontaneous and just so much fun, and just a brilliant way to jump into a year of trying to travel more and trying to have more experiences. I also feel like I really clicked into gear of wanting to create travel content and also really enjoying this kind of photography as well. So I feel like this was a pretty formative trip for how I wanted the rest of the year to go, really, and I'm so glad I did it. The Moulin Rouge was a trip that my mum and I took for her birthday in February, and oh my gosh, if you have an opportunity to see this stage show, go and see it. It is superb. The music is immaculate. If you like the film, you're gonna love this because they've basically modernized everything to a current music taste standard, and it just, it was so good. I loved the little moments of modernization they put in it. I loved the references to the original film they put in it. It was so catchy. Backstage Romance is one of the best songs ever. It's such a good mashup. There's so much going on. It's such a chaotic song, but it just makes me feel so happy. You know that you have like those kind of songs that give you instant serotonin? Backstage Romance. Fantastic stage show. I have been travelling around a little bit more this year within the UK, and one of the things that I wanted to do more of was visit areas in the Cotswolds. So this is a photo from Stow-on-the-Wold. This is the Tolkien door, which is basically said to have inspired the doors of Durin in Lord of the Rings. I also on this trip went to Bourton-on-the-Water, and I'm hoping this year I can go to Castle Combe, which is meant to be one of the most beautiful villages in the UK. In April, I went to Cornwall with my family. They were going down for a specific reason and asked if I wanted to tag along. I think we literally spent just a Saturday and a Sunday, maybe a Friday night, I don't know. It wasn't long at all in Cornwall, but it was a really nice little trip. This photo is from Boscastle, which I explored with Pippin, our family dog. He's a Cavapoo and he's very beanie, and we went around here for the day whilst my mum, my stepdad and my sister were at the specific reason they'd gone down to Cornwall for. It was a really lovely trip, and I think again something for me to kind of play about with my photography style a little bit as well. I took my first trip to Hay on Wye and to the Hay Festival. This honestly seems like it wasn't that long ago, but I think this was like right at the start of the summer possibly. I went to see an R.F. Kuang talk and also met up with some friends, and it was really nice. This is called the Town of Books, I believe, and for good reason. It has so many bookshops and I would definitely like to go back. We had Rosie the Pouchon join our family in the summer. Sadly, my grandparents' dog Ozzy, who was a beautiful border collie, passed away earlier in the year, and Rosie joined their family in the summer. She is so cute. She's a little Pouchon, which is a poodle cross the Bichon Frise. She's so tiny. In this photo, she is the size of my foot, which is a size 6, UK size 6. And she's so cute. She's so cute. And she's still like a little ball of fluff now, and I love her to bits, so that was a real highlight. I went to Cornwall again with Katie from Katie Elizabeth Reads. Again, I will leave anybody that I mentioned linked down below. We took a trip to go down to Katie's cottage that she has in Cornwall, and it was just so lovely. We visited a little couple of areas in the local area that Katie knew and wanted to take me around, and we had a really nice time. This photo is when we were visiting, I can't remember the name of the beach, but we basically took our books, took a blanket and just sat on the beach until it was dark, and it was a really lovely memory. I think generally just the memory of seeing friends throughout this year. I've spent a lot of time in London with Jade and Kath. It's been so much fun, and I've just seen so many friends, so this kind of photo represents just seeing loads of friends. I have a habit of basically whenever I see my friends, before we say goodbye, we put in another date in the calendar to see each other again, so we know that it's definitely there. And I think that's a really great way to kind of just make sure that you don't just slip into the habit of saying, oh, we'll organise something, and you know it's actually in the calendar every few months, and that has definitely been something that's enabled me to see as many friends as possible over 2023. My mum took me to see The Play That Goes Wrong for my birthday in July, and it was so funny. It's such it's such a cleverly done play. It basically completely is a completely deliberately wrong play, as you can tell from the backwards sign, the falling G. There's actually a cast poster in the corner of this image where you can't properly see, but I think it was like a picture of Tom Cruise is on the side of it as well, or somebody like that. It was just so funny. The whole play has deliberately gone incredibly wrong, and it's just hilarious from start to finish, and I loved it so much. This weekend, actually, my family and I are going to see Peter Pan Goes Wrong, which is the same company that have put on The Play That Goes Wrong. And I'm really excited because it's just constantly funny, and I love it when you have that feeling when your mouth aches, your face aches from smiling. I got my first tattoo. I'm so excited about this. This was a weird experience because I basically had booked in. I had been knowing I wanted something for ages, and I knew that I wanted just a little sun. The reason for having a sun was because I feel infinitely better when I am in the sun. It definitely affects my mood and makes me feel really positive and happy. And I wanted to be able to carry a sun around with me permanently for that, but also I feel like I try and be a sunshiny, positive, happy person, and I just liked that that was a reflection of my personality. So I'd booked this tattoo in months ago with an artist that I'd found, and I was really excited about it. And then on the morning of getting the tattoo, I'd booked the day off work. The artist messaged me saying that they were so sorry, but they had a sick bug and they wouldn't be able to do the tattoo, and they couldn't fit me in again for like months. And this was my first tattoo. I was like really hyped up, and I was really ready for it and really excited, and I was just completely like, oh. And I had this feeling that if I didn't do it, then I wouldn't do it at all. And I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to like rush finding somebody else, but my friend had got a tattoo from an artist not too far from me, and they had spoken very highly of them. They'd shown me loads of examples. Their style was beautiful, and they happened to have slots available for that day because it was quite a small, quick tattoo. So I went in. Obviously no design had been done in advance, whereas I had seen designs from the other tattoo artist, and obviously then unfortunately she was ill, and I just wasn't really sure like how it was going to work. So she ended up drawing this there and then. It was different to the designs. Obviously it was different to the designs the other tattoo artist had done because it was two different tattoo artists, but it was actually better. I preferred it. I went in saying I wanted it to be sketchy, I wanted it to be irregular, and I think that it just is that. So I'm so pleased with how this turned out. I'm so excited by it, and every time I see it I feel really pleased that I got it. And I would like another tattoo. I would like to get here a little pea pod because my mum calls me Pea, and I'd like to have that there in like a nice sketchy, slightly realistic style. I think that would look cute. Okay, we've suddenly like escalated from tattoo to going on the best trip of my existence. I went to Vietnam in September, and honestly I feel like this not only makes the moment of my whole year but the moment of my whole decade and just ever, because this has been on my bucket list for the longest time. And again, I wouldn't say this was like super spontaneous in the way that Paris was, but this came about and was an example of me just like pushing myself to say yes to something, even though it was a little bit unknown. And I think I'm going to try and do more of that in 2024. But this basically, I mean, I'm so in awe that the whole thing happened. But my friend and his friend were doing a open group trip. So basically they were planning a trip starting in Thailand and ending in Japan. And in the middle, they were also going to Vietnam and South Korea. And they were basically just putting the itinerary out there to all their friends and saying, if anyone wants to come along to any part of this, do. So I messaged Katie, who you will have seen in the previous photo going to Cornwall, and said, what do you think? And Katie was like, yes. And I was like, yes. So we were like, cool. Katie had never met my friend and his friend. I'd never met his friend. Obviously I had met my friend, funnily enough. So we all met up, we booked everything, and we went to Vietnam, and then we went to South Korea, which is the next photo, spoilers. But this was honestly, I can't even begin to describe how sublime an experience this was. In these photos, the two photos, well, the one on the left and the one in the middle at the bottom is the floating islands, which is this beautiful landscape of these islands that are just floating essentially on the water, and you take a boat tour around them and stop off at various places on the way, and that was just so beautiful. That was in Halong Bay. And then the photo on the right is Barna Hills, which is a 5-kilometer cable car journey which took about 20 minutes over the Vietnamese rainforest, where you then get to this really interesting kind of theme park area that is slightly French inspired. It's such a weird culture balance. You're going through the rainforest and there's nothing around you apart from the cable car and this rainforest. And it's just, I mean, I felt incredibly emotional because I'd never seen anything like this and being in nature in this way, albeit, yes, in a cable car, but it was completely the definition of the word sublime. And then you get to the end of the journey and you're suddenly in this really randomly made French theme park that just, I mean, I won't go into like the history of why it's there and stuff, but it was a really interesting balance. I just felt so strange, but so unique. So that was just fantastic. And then we went to South Korea. We did 5 days in Seoul, and oh my gosh, this library. This is the Starfield Library, and wow, if you ever go, you have to go here. This is just absolutely incredible just to gaze upon. I mean, I don't know if they ever want to get the books off the top shelf, how they're going to do that. I assume they are prop books, but just visually stunning. Could have stayed there all day. The whole trip to Seoul was also absolutely beautiful. I think Vietnam was just such a bucket list place for me to go that I also did definitely really enjoy South Korea as well, but like Vietnam was like sat up here on a pedestal at this point. But South Korea was really beautiful. It was just Katie and I in South Korea. The guys left us after day one. They then went on to Japan. They were literally there for like 2 days in South Korea and then continued their open trip. So we stayed on for a little bit longer before flying home. Longest flight ever, and felt like it as well. I think I slept for like an hour on a 14-hour flight, which was not ideal. But anyway, the whole trip, oh, it was so good. It was so good. I spent a lot of time with my family this year. I always do. I'm very close with my family and I love them to bits. And this is just like a kind of, again, another one photo to represent that whole kind of vibe. But this is when we went pumpkin picking at a local pumpkin patch in October. I went to Yalk and I chaired a panel called the Edge of Tomorrow panel, which was about dystopian literature. I love doing things like that. I absolutely love public speaking, weirdly. I love going to events like that and doing that kind of thing. I love being able to talk to these authors and chat about their books. It was so fun and it was so interesting. Obviously going to the event as well was just great. I get to see so many bookish people and see so many of my friends. I adore it. A massive highlight as well this year has been filming the Cover to Cover series. This has been a series I've been working on since February, I think, and came to a close in December. And I just had such a good time doing this. This was actually around this time last year. I went for a walk with my friend and we stopped and we had some lunch, and he said, I've got an idea for you. Have you ever thought about traveling the country on a bookshop tour? And I was like, ooh, I would love to do that, but I don't know if I could like feasibly do that as one trip. But what if I split it up? And thus Cover to Cover was born. So this became a series where I basically went to 10 different independent bookshops over the course of the year, and I visited one a month, and I basically bought books there, read the books I bought from there, talked about different aspects of the bookshop, and just had the best time. It was so lovely. The bookshops featured here, we have Bert's Books in Swindon on the top left, Cole's Books in Bicester on the top right, and Books on the Hill in St Albans in the middle, which was the last bookshop I went to and was just beautiful. Those are all the big memory moments. But what about the books? I read 118 books in 2023. Oh, the animations are already annoying me. That accounts to 39,310 pages, 62,450 minutes of reading, apparently, and 43 days. 43 solid days spent reading. I mean, I think this is based on like an average reading speed. I don't know if it's my average reading speed, but 43 days of reading. That's a lot. The shortest book that I read is Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. This is a very interesting horror book and it's 74 pages. The longest book that I read is the very chunky Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, and this is 847 pages. I'm pretty sure when the new Sarah J Maas book comes out, that's immediately gonna like soar to the top of my biggest book read of 2024, which we don't have long to wait. My most read genre. Here is my graph from Corepile. My most read genre is fantasy, followed by contemporary, then horror, and then historical fiction. I know I read a lot more historical fiction over 2023, but I didn't necessarily expect it to come in the top 4 of genres read. Fantasy makes sense to me. Contemporary, yes, also makes sense. And then horror, I've been reading a lot more of and enjoying a lot more horror recently. But yeah, historical fiction, never a genre I thought would be there, but I'm clearly enjoying it. Star ratings. The most star ratings I have given over 2023 is a 4-star, which I think is quite nice. You know, that's a nice balance. And then a 3-star, and then 5-star, and then 2-star. I haven't ever given a 1-star because I think I would have just DNF'd the book. I mean, 2-star probably should have been a DNF, but for some reason I kept going. I don't know what books they are. In fact, I want to find that out. Hang on. I need to know. Oh, okay, so Paris by the Book was one of the books that I rated 2 stars, which I did not get on with at all. And You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry. Did not like that very much. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, Madam, was a big disappointment, unfortunately. The House at Phantom Park was also a big disappointment. Hang on, where's the other? And In the Miso Soup. Clearly didn't get on with that one either. Okay, these ones are like little awards for the books that made me feel specific things. The most emotional was The Bridges of Madison County by Robert James Waller. I don't know why I did this to myself, but I reread this at the start of 2023. It's one of my favourite books of all time. It's beautiful, it's heartbreaking. It's just, it's so short. It's about the fleeting affair between a National Geographic photographer and a woman who is very unhappily married. I don't normally like books that glorify affairs, but for some reason this one apparently just moves through that dislike and moves into making me cry every single time, and I absolutely love it. And yeah, I think I honestly, big reason I love this book is because of the photography element and the National Geographic photography element, and I just kind of want to be doing that, and it makes me feel like I get to live vicariously through these characters. But it's just beautiful. I didn't think it was going to make me cry the second time around, but it did. Most surprising. This is Wild by Cheryl Strayed. The reason that this is in most surprising is because it is not the kind of book I would usually pick up. It's a non-fiction following Cheryl Strayed as she goes on this journey to hike the PCT in America. And it's a huge hike. It's a huge physical and mental challenge for her. She's also dealing with grief and loss. It's definitely not something I would have thought I would have ever picked up, but I watched the film last year or the year before, and it blew me away. I just thought it was fantastic. It's got Reese Witherspoon in it. It's honestly, I would highly recommend checking it out, and it made me want to read the book, and I just thought it was fantastic and brilliant. I think I gave this one 5 stars. It was everything that I didn't know I needed, and yeah, it was great. Most disappointing is Madam by Phoebe Wynne. This is here in lieu of Iron Flame, to be honest, which could also be here. Madam was disappointing because what I thought it was going to be was this empowering dark academia that was centric around how girls were treated at this elitist school, and instead it was a dark academia about how girls were treated at this elitist school, but it was so frustrating. The main character was a complete flake, and I did not like her at all, and she frustrated the crap out of me, and I just needed her to be a bit more bold and interesting to read about. Like, you know, she's carrying the story, and she just felt as bland as a cracker with no cheese on it, and I didn't get on with her. Iron Flame, honorary mention for most disappointing, because honestly Fourth Wing hyped that book up so much for me and it just flopped, unfortunately. I've spoken about it so many times now, so I'm not going to go into it again, but it wasn't what I hoped it would be. Most bizarre, weird, mind-bending reading experience. Please appreciate the twirly transition I have used for Uzumaki by Junji Ito. This book was so weird. I had never read a Junji Ito before, and I now want to read more. This I see sometimes when I close my eyes to go to sleep at night. It's following a... It's following a world in which, or a town where spirals are kind of taking over and everyone's obsessed with these spirals, and it's completely strange and completely bizarre. It's a graphic novel, so you get a very clear visualization of how weird everything is in this town, and it's slightly, I don't even know what it's slightly, it's all kinds of weird and unusual and interesting, and you can't really look away at the same time as not wanting to look at it. The most entertaining is Percy Jackson, and just generally all of the Percy Jackson books by Rick Riordan, or the first 5 in the series. I read these for the first time. It was a reread for The Lightning Thief, but all the rest of them I was reading for the first time in a reading vlog. I will pop a link above if you would like to watch it. And I had such a good time. These are so funny, they are so entertaining, they're so enjoyable, I love every single thing about them, and I just had such a good time reading them. Just immaculate. The funniest is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This, I find it funny what I thought this was about. The blurb says something about, like, the band's back together, and I genuinely thought, I knew it was kind of a satirical fantasy book where it was kind of ticking through some of the traditional, like, quest fantasy type of tropes and experiences in books, but through, like, a satirical gaze. But I thought, when it said the band is back together, I thought it had taken the satire to a whole new level, and it was actually about, like, a literal band, like a music band, not like a band of brothers. So I went into it expecting it to be that, and it was not that, and I don't know how I ever thought it was that, so that was just, yeah. But it was very funny, and I really enjoyed it, and I will be reading more from this author. Honourable mentions go to You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kaylin Bayron. By the way, I'm going to talk about some of these, like, separately, like once we've gone through this PowerPoint presentation, so I can go into them in more detail. The Daughters of Izdihar by Hadir Elspy, Something Wild and Wonderful by Anita Kelly, The Mountains Sing by Nguyen Phan Quay Mai, Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, Spoonbenders by Dow Gregory, and Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. Not all of these are going to be the ones I discuss later, but like these are just generally the ones that I wanted to put on there as honourable mentions for like different reasons. I've read so many fantastic books this year across so many different genres, and it's just been such a great reading experience that it's hard to kind of include everything and summarise everything. So I have got a stack of books. I think I've got 12 of the best books, but then some of them, like, I could make it a longer list. Something Wild and Wonderful by Anita Kelly and also The Daughters of Izdihar by Hadir Elspy are not ones I'm talking about after this PowerPoint, but those are ones I wanted to include here as well because for different reasons I just thought they were great. Something Wild and Wonderful is actually another book about people taking on the PCT. This one is a fiction, but it was so brilliant and so emotional as well. It's an LGBT romance contemporary, and it's following these two people who meet on the trail and have different reasons that they're on the trail, and you get to see each of those reasons and see that the relationship that forms between them, and it just felt really beautiful. The Daughters of Izdihar, I can't remember the exact details of, but I remember the feeling it gave me, and I can still see the imagery from this. This is, I want to say it's a YA fantasy. Is it a YA fantasy or is it an adult fantasy? I can't remember, but it's a fantasy. And there's magic, and there's this opposing issue happening in the town. That's pretty much the main things I can remember. I need a refresher on that one because I know that there is a book 2 coming, but those are my honorary mentions. I'll talk about all the other ones separately in a little bit. But what is the best book of the year? I know that you're all anticipating it. Are you ready for fireworks? It's Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I loved this book, and I'm so pleased that I did because it was me reading out of my comfort zone. This was a recommendation from Coles Books in Bicester, and it was recommended to me because one of the booksellers said it was the best book they'd read of last year. So I picked it up on that recommendation. It's a sci-fi, it's got pandemic stuff in it, and it's also like different stories entwining together. Now I am loving that kind of idea of a story trope more and more, that the different stories that intertwine together, especially if it's like across time. And this did this brilliantly. It's a very short book, but it was so fun and interesting, and it was incredibly addictive, incredibly compelling. It had traits I didn't think I was going to like in it, having the pandemic stuff being pretty much just predominantly a sci-fi, which is not often something that I reach for, but I really enjoyed it. And it's the best book of the year. I will be talking about it, well, showing you it in a sec, but it was great. But the 2024 goals. In light of reading over 100 books in 2023, I am setting my 2024 reading goal to 1. I did this last year as well, and I did it because I read so much for content and I do so much around those books that I'm reading that the 1 ounce of pressure I can remove from myself is having a goal of reading a really large amount of books that, yeah, I probably would hit because I've hit it for many years in a row now and have always been reading quite a lot because I create content around books. But if I can remove that little ounce of pressure for myself, I will. And I did this last year to test to see how it would work, and I really enjoyed it. I like setting reading goals, and I do enjoy working towards them, and I love seeing other people working towards their reading goals, and I find it all very motivating. But actually, I found it better last year to have the goal of 1 book because I achieved it very quickly and very easily, and then it just kind of removed the unneeded pressure, really. So 2024, same goal. Other goals for 2024. I want to expand my experience and knowledge within photography and film. Obviously, I am creating content for YouTube constantly, but I really want to grow and develop that, and you might have seen that in my last vlog of the year. I'll pop a link up here to that if you haven't already seen it. And also in the vlog that I'm currently working on that isn't live yet, I am trying to really develop and hone in my creative skill there, and I'm really excited for what that means to me. But also I really want to start pushing into photography a little bit more, and potentially some freelance photography, and I'm really excited about that as well. So there's lots of things around these two that I want to really work on and understand, but just generally I want to grow my knowledge and my experience and just try and learn new things and continue to love doing it. Of course, books are always going to be a goal, but just generally I want to make sure that I am not putting any unneeded pressure on myself for reading. Like, I'm always going to have to read for content, but also just making sure that I'm really enjoying what I'm reading and I'm picking up the books that I'm really excited about and finding those books and feeling like that real excitement for reading that I just love. And you can't guarantee that every book's going to be a good book, of course, but I'm just going to try and find those books that make me feel really excited and continue to enjoy my reading experience. Traveling more is always going to be a goal for me, but this is also kind of representative of trying to take more trips, maybe by myself, maybe more spontaneously, just try and push myself a little bit more with how I'm able to experience things via travel and not have to necessarily rely on other people or not having to make those plans ages in advance, and being able to just relax a little bit more with it, I think would be great for me and just shows me that there's not just the one way to travel and you can do it in loads of different ways and it can still be great. This is a big one for me, and this is kind of doing more of what I love and prioritizing my brain and myself. This is the icons I could find to represent that. I had a very good year last year, as I've said, but I also had a bit of a tough year with mental health for a couple of reasons, and I want to try and make amends with my brain this year and sort out those reasons, and I think I can do that, and it's not going to be like an overnight thing, but I'm going to be working towards that. And I want to create a life for myself that I feel really excited by, because we get one life and I want to make sure that I'm making the absolute most out of it, and that is something that's really important to me. So yeah, that's going to be a big focus in 2024. I've said it already, but I just have this feeling that this is going to be my year. I mean, last year was a really great year, but I feel like this is going to be my year. And I need to prioritize myself, my brain, my mental health, doing what I love, and creating a life for myself that I love. I don't have to be complacent. I can get that life that I really want, and I'm going to do it. Finally, this paint splatter is representing trying to be less scared. I think that sometimes there's a little fear in me, a little anxiety that can make me say no to things that actually should have been a yes. Vietnam was such a good example of when I was like, nope, don't do it. It's going to be big and like huge and complicated and you just don't want to get involved in that. And like, you know, I've always wanted to go to Vietnam, so why would I not want to do that? But my instant reaction was like, oh, but I said yes, and I'm so glad I did. So I kind of want to stop having that fear with so many different things, with the way I create, with the way that I do day-to-day things. I feel like I'm always surrounded by this little bit of fear that something's going to go wrong, fear that I'm going to do something wrong, and I need to start living in the moment more and start enjoying living in that moment. And for that reason, I think that will kind of free up my creative freedom to both allow me to live the life I love and also allow me to grow creatively as well. So that's a big thing as well. Done! Okay, that is all of my goals, my reflections. I always feel the pressure to kind of get everything down in a video at the start of each year that is a reflection and is looking at what my goals are. But honestly, I think that goals chop and change and adapt to what you need them to be. And as long as you kind of hold what the things that are really important to you are, those kind of goals will shift and shape around that. And they shouldn't feel like they need to be really rigid. So yeah, I feel excited by everything. I feel incredibly optimistic, and I feel like having a good 2023 has set me up to feel like I'm going to have a great 2024. We're going to have a look at the 12 books that I have got in my top books that I read over the last year. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I could have added more, and I don't know why I've picked 12. I probably should have picked 10. I probably should have been a little bit more picky. But we're here with 12, so we're going to go through them. I'm going to try and go through them quickly because I've already talked to you for a very long time and I don't know how my camera's not overheated, to be honest. So let's do this. We're starting with Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This was everywhere at the start of the year and is still everywhere now, to be honest. I've already mentioned that Iron Flame, which is the sequel to this, was one of my biggest disappointments of the last year. But this one was really fun, to be honest. Like, it's just a fun, easy reading experience. It's full of adventure and action and dragons. You probably know what this is about by now, so I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail about it. But this one, when I found out about it, I got that little bit of excitement of, oh, I really want to read that. And I love it when that feeling hits and you order the book and you want to like read it as soon as it arrives. I think that's a fun feeling, and I'm glad that this book gave me that feeling. It's not by any means like the best written thing ever, but it's just a good fun time. So for that reason, it's on this list because I enjoyed it and it was action-packed and it entertained me. Alice Oseman's Heartstopper Volume 5. Alice Oseman could just take all my money at this point because Nick and Charlie are just the best. This is a graphic novel series following Nick and Charlie and their love story and also their time as they go through their last few years at school. And it's just such a beautifully done story, but what I really love about this series is that Alice Oseman always has such important conversations so openly and so honestly, and I wish I'd have had these books as a teenager. This one, I'm not going to go into details about what it's about because if you haven't read the other ones I don't want to spoil it, but this one deals with a whole new conversation, and I just think it is approached in such a delicate and brilliant way, and I love this series so much. The illustrations are beautiful, and I can't not include this on the best books of the year. This was so anticipated, and I absolutely loved it. I do have a reading vlog reading this book and the fourth book. It is a spoiler-filled reading vlog, but if you would like to check it out, I will pop it linked above. You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kaylin Bayron is a very short horror. It's a YA horror, and I really loved this. I would love to read more horror from Kaylin Bayron. This is a slasher camp horror, and it's following a load of people who work at this camp who are there to put on a fake slasher show, and then it becomes like a real show. It's so short and so action-packed and like so much fun for it being a slasher. Can I say a slasher's fun? And it's very entertaining, it's very fast-paced, it's very tense. It's the kind of book that you will be on the edge of your seat reading. You're not really sure who's going to come out of it alive, and for that reason it is entertaining. Slightly sadistic, but it is entertaining. I kind of want to reread this already, to be honest. I think because it is so short, it's just one that you can whiz through really quickly, and if you are a fan of slashers, if you're a fan of something like the Final Girl support group, I think you'll like this. Spoonbenders by Daryl Gregory. This one was recommended to me by a bookseller in Mr. B's for an episode of Cover to Cover. It's about an all-American family who have some interesting abilities, some supernatural abilities, and when they were younger, they were all on a TV show together, and now it's about them as adults and how their lives have changed and how their abilities have changed as well. Completely random plot of stuff mixed together in this, completely strange. And actually, just glancing at the blurb, someone said it's balancing delightful wackiness with genuine tenderness, and I think that's probably a good summary of it. It's got that kind of balance of just being really unique and interesting and strange with this lovely sense of family and how they all care for each other. It was a great time, and I would highly recommend it if you like anything with kind of little interesting supernatural abilities at the same time as having just a kind of slice of life feel about it. Obviously, I've already spoken about Emily St. John's Sea of Tranquility. This is my best book of the year. This stack is in no particular order, as you can tell. Can we appreciate the spreads on this? It's such a fantastic book. It's just the interweaving of all the storylines, the characters, how it all knits together, the sci-fi element, the futuristic side to it at the same time as looking back on the world and what's happened to get it to where it is. The mystery element in this that did see all these stories weaving together was, I think, the best part of this for me. I just adored it. As you can see, it is literally teeny weeny. I think it's under 250 pages maybe? Hang on. Oh, it's just about 250 pages. Super quick read, super short chapters, completely swept me away, and I just keep thinking about it still. So yeah, it was fantastic and everybody should read it. The Mountains Sing by Nguyen Phan Quay Mai was heartbreaking and absolutely beautiful. I have talked about this a lot in conjunction with Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. These two are both on this list, so I'll kind of do the same again because they both gave me that heartbreaking feel. So The Mountains Sing is following a family in Vietnam and across generations of that family. So we are following a young girl who is experiencing Vietnam in her modern day, which is in the 70s? Yes, it's 1972, and we're following a 12-year-old girl. And then you're also seeing the stories that her grandmother is telling her from her youth, and everything that has gone on in between that. And it's a multi-generational historical fiction. It's absolutely heartbreaking. It's absolutely beautiful. And I just absolutely adored it. And then I read Pachinko, and same. It's a multi-generational historical fiction that is following one family as they start their lives in Korea and then go to Japan, and everything that comes alongside that, and the kind of growth of this family as well. And again, just both of these books, whatever the word of stories that follow across families and across generations, and you see someone's whole life. I love it. And it also breaks me because you can't help but feel invested, and obviously it's not all going to be highs. There's going to be a lot of lows, and there certainly were in these books. Both of these, which is fantastic, and I read them very close together, which is why I kind of grouped them in my head, but also it's hard not to when they are both about these kind of multi-generational story experiences in a historical fiction setting, and they're just so beautiful. They are so beautiful. Pachinko, just I mean I just lost for words with these two because I can't recommend them enough, but also they are so hard-hitting. Pachinko, I feel like, hits even harder because it goes through nearly 100 years of this family. And I think that's such a clever way to narrate something, because you immediately form a connection with the first character you meet. And then without knowing it, you've been passed on to the next character and then the next character, and you just see this family grow and grow and grow until the character you knew right at the start is now a character you have barely any interaction with. And I just think that that balance is so clever in books like this, and one of the reasons I love them so much. So both of these are fantastic. I don't know why I did it to myself reading them so close together, because they both broke me and they're both beautiful, and I think that you should check them out. Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. This is one of the first books I read of 2023. Look at those sprayed edges. They're so pretty. This one is about a woman working as a scientist, and she is treated very differently because she is a woman. It's in the 60s. Is it in the 60s? 50s? 60s? It's in the early 60s. And she ends up becoming a host for a cooking show. Some things happen in between that, but this is about her journey and her experiences as a woman in this industry and how she's treated. This made me so mad, but it was so good. This, like, there's a whole complex of me talking about my feelings for this book in the vlog where I read it. I will leave a link up here to that as well. But it just made me so angry because of how she was treated, but at the same time I couldn't stop reading it because it made me so angry. And I think when a book can make you feel like that, it's a pretty impressive book. And this is a pretty impressive book. Wild by Cheryl Strayed. I have already spoken about this one. This is the true story of Cheryl Strayed taking on the PCT. She's dealing with grief, she's dealing with loss, and it's an incredibly emotional book, and you can see how much this journey means to her. It's a beautiful book. I mean, whenever you're reading about somebody's true story, someone's memoir in this way, it's incredibly hard not to feel something because it's stuff that they have actually experienced and actually gone through, and you can see how much this journey meant to her, and it's incredibly motivational, and I think this is fantastic. Totally something that I didn't expect I would pick up and enjoy as much as I did, and credit to the film for kind of making me want to pick up the book. Usually I would read a book first and then watch the film, but I think that the order I did this worked really well, and the film definitely does justice to this book. I've already spoken as well about Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames, but this is a very funny book. I'm going to read you the line that made me think this was about a musical band. Clay Cooper and his band were once the best of the best. I mean, yes, it then does say the most feared and renowned crew of mercenaries this side of Heartwild, but I thought like maybe they, you know, I thought it was funny. I thought it was like, you know, a band as well as being mercenaries. And then it says it's time to get the band back together at the end. And I just, you know, I got the wrong end of the stick, but it was great, and it was so funny, and it was so humorous, and I feel so silly, and I don't really need to remind everybody that I thought that, but I did. But it's great. It's a fun fantasy. It's a little bit different, which I love. I read The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods as well in 2023 and absolutely adored it. I've spoken about this one very recently because I only finished it last month. This was our Patreon book club pick for the last 2 months of the year. We run a Patreon book club that is a bi-monthly book club, so it's every 2 months. The book changes. It's ran through Fable, but if you would like to join, it is available to anyone in the Rivendell tier upwards, and it is linked down below. This is a magical bookshop following a magical book about a bookshop that's a magical bookshop following 3 characters. 1 is in the past and 2 are in the present day, and they are all somehow, their lives are intertwined with this vanishing bookshop, and it's magical and it's beautiful. We have some slight weavings of Shakespeare and Co.'s origin in this book as well, because one of the characters, the one that's the words, the storyline that we're following in the past is taking place somewhat in the 20s. I've forgotten how to speak, I've been filming this for too long. Let's try again. One of the characters that we're following, her storyline is set in the 1920s, and we get to see the origin of Shakespeare and Co., which is really interesting because I read The Paris Bookshop, which is about the origin of Shakespeare and Co., a fictionalised version, at the start of the year because it was one of the books I was reading before I went to Paris. Again, I have a vlog on that if you'd like to check it out. That is me reading books set in Paris, and it's linked above. But I read that before I went, and that kind of ties in, that has kind of given me a bit of background knowledge for some of the stuff I was reading in this, which was really interesting. I didn't love that book in the end, actually. It kind of flopped a little bit towards the end. The start was really good, and then the end wasn't so good, but it gave me the foundation for this, or some of this. Not that you need that foundation, but it made it an interesting or different reading experience. I love how this is about a love of books and a love of bookshops and that passion for reading, and I will always love books like that. So yeah, this was fantastic. The final book on this list is The Labyrinth of the Spirits by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Unfortunately, Carlos Ruiz Zafón passed away a couple of years ago, and this series has been one I have been putting off finishing for the longest time. This is the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series. The first book is The Shadow of the Wind, which is one of my favourite books of all time. It's a mystery series that is a book about books set in Barcelona. It's beautiful, the characters are fantastic, I love them so much, and after spending 4 books with them, I love them even more. This is the concluding book. It's a pretty epic, chunky concluding book, but it is so worth it, and it has to go on this list because just finishing this series has been something that I have been putting off because I didn't want it to end, and I didn't want to say goodbye to the characters that I've been reading about since I was like 18, 19. But I finally finished it this year, and oh, you know when you just have that feeling when you have read that book that you've been putting off because you know it's just going to kind of break you emotionally? That's the feeling I had with this series. If you like mysteries and you like clever mysteries with the historical element and the books about books, this series is just fantastic. I do think the first book is my favourite of the series, and then this book I think is my second favourite. Carla Stroh-Zaphon's writing style is just beautiful but still digestible and just brilliant, and the mystery woven in is so clever. Okay, that is all of the books, all of the wrap-ups, all of the goals. I was going to do this as 2 separate videos and have like my top books of the year be a separate video to the goals and the reflections, and I thought, no, do it as one video, it'll be fine. And I've been filming for quite a long time, so maybe I should have done it as 2 separate videos. But I hope you've enjoyed watching. Thank you so much for your support of my content. If you're new, if you've been here for a long time, just thank you so much. I am really trying to work my arse off to grow my content in the next year and onwards from that, but I've been really trying to push, with especially with my vlogs, a slight different style and like playing about with new things and learning new things, and I'm just really excited for what that means and how much that's going to grow and develop over the next year as well. So I am very excited for 2024. A massive happy new year to everybody. I really hope that you had a fantastic 2023. I hope you had a great end to the year. I hope you had a great start and are having a great start to 2024. Drop down in the comments one thing that you would love to do this year, one thing you would love to experience. I think for me, if I could pick like one thing I would really like as an experience, I would like to travel somewhere solo, like even if it was just for a night. I would really love to do that this year. If you're looking for a bookish community to join this year, as I said earlier, my Patreon is linked down below. I love this community so much. We do weekly live shows where we do reading sprints to just keep each other accountable and motivated to read. We do regular readathons. There is a book club. There is a Discord. There are digital downloads. There are so many things. There's Lightroom presets. There's shop discounts. So many different things. I love this community so much, and that is all linked down below if you ever do want to join. Thank you so much for watching this video. Happy New Year. I will see you in the next one.